Today, the FCC made a landmark ruling that could actually change the way that we all access the internet, make phone calls, and access all kinds of media, really. Today, the FCC took an important step towards unshackling cell phones and blanketing the country with free wireless internet access. The Federal Communications Commission just ruled that a portion of the 700 megahertz wireless spectrum to be auctioned off early next year will have to adhere to certain open access principles. The airwaves currently used for TV are expected to fetch between $10 and $15 billion. Google is pledging to bid aggressively against the phone companies if it means free internet and cell phone airwaves for all. However, critics say open access guidelines will make little impact and take years to implement. The provision won't take place until at least 2010, and only a third of the available waves will be affected. Will we soon get to use any cell phone we want and have free Wi-Fi? And should Google be able to own the airwaves and give them away for free? Ditch those wires, people. It's The Loop. All right, my guest tonight from New York, Deputy Editor of Special Reports for Forbes.com, David E. Walsh is here, and from Washington, D.C., Scott Cleland, President of Precursor and Chairman of NetCompetition.org, which is an e-forum funded by broadband companies. Gentlemen, welcome to The Loop. It's a huge topic, so let's get right into it. We'll start with you, David. Today's FCC vote, what exactly does this mean for a company like Google?
Well, if Google wins this auction in the end, I mean, what we've seen today is they're probably still going to be in, they're still going to bid, and if Google wins this license and gets into this space, it's going to mean that they're going to do an end run around the phone companies. It's going to mean an end to the big bills, to the restrictive contracts, to the phone plans that tell you you can't use this phone, you can't use this application. Google is going to use this wireless infrastructure to offer cheap or free wireless broadband across the country, and they're going to take the telecoms out of the picture.
Scott, that could be a huge thing for consumers if that happens. Do you think that that could be the future?
I think what Google is doing is a little backseat driving, and they're trying to get the policy situated the way they want it. But I doubt they're going to bid. It's kind of like Amazon saying they want to buy UPS in order to deliver all their books. I just don't see Google. Google's a search engine, and getting into the telecommunications business and offering a wireless network, I mean, it's a $10 billion effort, and Google has zero expertise in this area.
All right, well, see, Scott, this is where you're wrong. Google is not a search engine. Google is a media company, and they're an advertising company. And what happened was, during the big net neutrality debate, telecom companies like AT&T said, oh, Google's getting a free ride. We don't want them having their services over our network. Google's not going to have that. Google's going to put out the network themselves and then allow everybody to access their content, access their search, access their videos. It's not, I mean, I think they're definitely going to go forward on this because they don't want to have to answer to the phone companies.
Well, I think definitely is overstating it. When they offered to bid 4.6, there were a zillion caveats in there. They basically said, if you do everything we said, basically if you rewrite the 1993 and 96 law to favor us, and you enforce it perfectly, and you make it enduring forever, we might bid. And they didn't get what they wanted, and so I really seriously doubt that they're going to do it.
Well, Scott, let me ask you this. What was announced today?
Let me make one more point, though, about them being a search engine. They're a growth stock. People do not, their investor base do not want them becoming a capital-intensive, regulated entity. I just don't see it fit. It doesn't fit.
Well, how does what was announced today actually stop the Verizons and the AT&Ts from playing along and buying every block of the spectrum and essentially controlling this coast-to-coast network?
Oh, look, we have the most competitive facilities-based wireless business in the world. We have very robust competition. Most other countries have one strong player and two weak players. And what we have
we
here
also
is we have
don't
at least
have one of the
5
best
strong wireless providers.
David, I'm sorry.
We definitely have one of the best broadband infrastructures.
I'm sorry, wait a second. I got to stop you there, Scott. You think this country has one of the best broadband infrastructures?
Oh, absolutely. What we have is we are the only country in the world that has a second national broadband infrastructure, which is to almost all Americans, and that's the cable infrastructure. Nobody in Europe has something like that.
True, but
so we have basically 2 wireline and 5 wireless competitors.
Very true, but David, does that matter if none of those services are anywhere as good as they are in any of the other countries?
No, it absolutely doesn't. I mean, what we have now is a wireless system where it's totally in control of the telcos, where a company like Verizon or AT&T can charge you $3 for a ringtone when you could buy the song for 99 cents on iTunes, but they're not going to let you have access to iTunes. They're going to charge you $20 for a Flash-based game that you could go and play for free on the web somewhere. It's not a true, open, useful wireless network. It's their piecemeal version that
David, real quick, I want to go to Scott for something that he wrote on his blog, which I thought was really interesting. You know, Verizon has said that adopting any form of open access is against the law. Essentially, the FCC might be overstepping their boundaries. And I'm wondering, Scott, is that the case? And if so, how could that hurt even the decision that we heard about today? How could this stop the spectrum from even being sold?
Well, the FCC has a history of getting these things wrong, and they had 30 megahertz spectrum that laid fallow for almost 10 years because they got it wrong. And in this one, there's multiple statutes that they are not doing correctly. And, basically, the Congress and the law said they want to auction spectrum to get the maximum value to reduce the deficit. And how you do that is by an auction bidding process. And basically, what the FCC is doing is rigging it and giving a special discount to a Google-type bidder, and billions of dollars would be lost by the American taxpayer. And they're going to have to defend this in court, and I think there's a real risk that this auction will be delayed or they'll have to redo it.
All right, so let's forget for 1 second the mega companies. Let's forget the Verizons, the AT&Ts. Let's even forget the Googles. I want to go to the final word, and I'll start with you, David. Paint me the perfect picture for the consumer. How should this pan out in the future? Who should I be rooting for when I keep hearing about these deals that are going on?
Well, I think you've got to root for Google here. I mean, it's hard because Google's getting bigger and bigger too. But the ideal situation here, I think, is Google gets a hold of this wireless spectrum. They pay out a huge payout. You know, this would probably be a bidding war, and the government make lots of money that way. But once they've got that spectrum, they open up the Google net, and we have free or close to free wireless broadband across the country. Consumers benefit hugely from that, whether you live in a rural area or whether you live in a city, and you can get the internet the same way you get it on your PC.
And I shouldn't have to worry about that network becoming self-aware and killing my house pets, right?
That's really the next problem we have to look at.
Just making sure. Scott, you, sir, final word. As a consumer, what's the ideal future here?
The ideal future is to have competition and capitalism try and deliver what are the best services and the best innovation for consumers. Basically, what we have right now is the most competitive wireless broadband network in the world. And it is providing more innovation and more choice than any other country in the world. And basically what Google wants is capitalism for itself and socialism for everybody else. It wants to turn the internet into a utility. The internet is a voluntary thing for everyone.
All right. Well, I hope it stays that way. I want to thank my guests, David and Scott, for joining us. Guys, I appreciate you keeping us in the loop. Look, I agree we got competition in this country, but I still paid $5.99 for my Rihanna umbrella ringtone, and I'm a little jaded with that.
Attack of the Show, weeknights at 7, only on G4.